FBC Edge students, parents, how's it going? This is Michael here at the Edge building, and I just wanted to touch base with you for a few minutes tonight to share a few things, to encourage you, and also just talk about some of the things that we're working on as a student ministry during this time. We certainly are not wasting time as we are still hard at work seeking to figure out ways to be more effective and efficient in the way that we are ministering to not just students but to families during this time. But I wanted to share a few things with you to begin with, and then I hope that you will share this with your students. I know that we have some students on Facebook, but we know that they're on other platforms as well. And so parents, as you see this, if you would share this with them, maybe even have a discussion as a family together, we think that would be helpful and beneficial for you as a family. I want to start by sharing just a few of the things that I've observed over the last several days as I've had much more time at home than normal. The first thing that I've observed is that I am getting old, and I've known that. I'm 37 now, but it really hit me the other day as I was playing soccer in the backyard with our children, and number one, I came away very sore in my thighs for some reason. I'm not sure what that's about. Also kind of jacked up my knee again just a little bit. But the other thing that I learned is my kids are tough. While I was out there kind of struggling, my kids were, Madison got knocked into a chair and got a cut on her leg, and she kind of bounced back up. Camden took a couple of balls off of the face, gave up a couple of goals off of his face, but he kind of hung with it, bled just a little bit. Callie took a couple of my shots off of her leg, but I'll tell you, they're just having a blast. We're having a great time together. I've also just kind of observed that Madison, our oldest in 6th grade, she is driven. Man, she's up every morning. She gets her work done, and she's able to enjoy the rest of the day. Callie, she is super creative, and she makes some of the best chocolate chip pancakes. She made some for us the other night, and they were tremendous. Camden is one of those kids who he is just 100 miles an hour at all times, but he's also developed some pretty serious Fortnite skills, which kind of puts me to shame. And also, I've realized too, now that all these elementary school kids are out of school, I've noticed that my Fortnite skills have diminished greatly. I'm not sure what that says about me. Also, Leah, I've noticed Leah pays attention way more than you would ever think. It's kind of funny when we're having a conversation. If I'm telling Camden to stop throwing the football in the house, I often hear Leah mimic and parrot me, and she's like, "Yeah, Camden, don't throw the football in the house." And so she's got her little antenna up, and she is reminding the rest of the children what they're supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing as well. And then Krista is just a superstar. As I'm home a lot more now, obviously during the day, I just get to witness the way that she loves and interacts and cares for our kids, and how she is really kind of making things happen at home when I'm not there, and it has given me just a far greater appreciation. I've always known how hard she works and how well she does in her role as a mother, but just being able to see it consistently every day, man, it's pretty amazing. And so it's been very encouraging in that regard. Our family has had a lot of time to spend together. We've been doing Bible studies together, doing catechism, just having some conversations that maybe we wouldn't have had previously because we're going different directions. But then also just trying to make the most of this as a family. This is a kind of a rare opportunity that we have to be together and to just hang out and spend some time together, do some different things. We're working on a puzzle right now. We've been going on walks almost every day when it hasn't been raining. But just making the most of this. And so I'd encourage you as a family to find some unique ways, if you haven't already, to be spending some time together and to be encouraging to one another in this time. Also, just from a student ministry perspective, just some things I want to make sure that you're aware of. We are not taking this time off. All of the ministry leaders are at work doing different things. And in terms of our adult leaders and our student ministry. And so with that being said, I want to talk to you for just a moment about some things that we've been working on. Number one, we've been trying to engage as many of our students as possible in video chats, group chats. A couple of days ago, actually, we played a game remotely, which was kind of cool, and we had a good time doing that. And so we're going to be doing more of that. We're going to be setting up some time. Like here in the next day or so, I'll be kind of hanging out on video chat with maybe the 6th grade guys and then maybe the 7th grade girls, at a different time, and just spending time with students that way, so that we can continue to be engaged. And so parents, I'll be sending out some information so that you know how to do that. There's an app that they can download on a phone, and if they don't have a phone, maybe they could use a device at the house. But it's just a way for us to be able to connect and to see each other and to stay engaged together as a group. We've also been working on updating contact information for our students and also for parents so that we are able to better communicate moving forward. And so we've been reaching out to many of you, trying to update information, and so just know that we've been working on that. Also tomorrow we're going to be meeting with our Sunday school leaders to be talking about potentially getting some video chats going on sometime Sunday, which would cover some of the Sunday school material that we have. And so those small group leaders will be connecting with your students as well. And so just be looking for information about that. And then also we've been working on some long-range planning. I've learned way more tech stuff than I've ever thought that I would, in terms of streaming and some other things we're doing on church-wide, but also that we'll be using for student ministry as well. And then also we're creating a YouTube channel that we're going to be dumping some content on, some videos that we are making, but also just some other resources for you as a family, as parents, as students. And so we will send you information on that as well. The reality of this is that this has created a lot of uncertainty, and we're not sure what this will look like in the end, in terms of when we'll meet again. What we do know is that our ministry is going to be better positioned moving forward as a result of some of the things that we're able to do now, as we've kind of hit pause on meeting together at this time. We're still working really, really hard to make Edge Student Ministry something that is really effective in the way that we seek to minister to both students and families. And so we're excited for that. We've missed the students. It is so weird. I said this last week. It's so weird to be here on a Wednesday night and to look around and it'd be a beautiful day outside and there'd be nobody else in the building. It's really hard for me because I love students. I've given the last 15 years of my life to invest in students. And so it's hard to not be able to see them in person. But we look forward to that time to end. What we do know is that we will not meet this coming Sunday, the 29th. We also will not meet on Wednesday, April the 1st. We will evaluate after that to make a determination moving forward. But we do know right now that we will not meet this coming Sunday or a week from now on Wednesday, and we'll let you know on the 5th. I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. We've been, before this break, we had been started a series in the book of Job, which is very timely for us as we are dealing with a great deal of suffering and a great deal of hurt. And we looked at this man Job, who God himself says is blameless and upright. He's a man of character and integrity. And we see this conversation in the heavens, that where God and Satan are having a conversation, and Satan is given the permission to afflict Job, which sounds so scandalous to us, but we know that God is doing something in this, and he is, one, proving the faith of Job genuine, and two, he is going to restore and he is going to bless far beyond what Job had to begin with. And so that's where the story ends, but we've kind of walked through this suffering of Job to this point where he has lost all of his livestock, which was his livelihood. He's lost his children. He's lost his workers. Everything is gone in a matter of minutes, where these messengers are coming and they're saying, "Hey, man, listen, these animals are gone. Your servants have been killed. Your children, storm blew through, knocked the house down. All 10 of them have died. And then he begins to grieve and mourn, and we find even his wife, who is not really even sure what to do with all of this, tells him, why do you continue to hold on to this hope? Just curse God and die. And we see that at the end of chapter 2 that Job is incredibly lonely. It seems like he's in this by himself, and he is kind of where we end in Job 2:10 is that he is all by himself, and he is his health has deteriorated. He's got boils all over himself. He's scraping it with pottery, and he is just broken and hurting. And we see an interesting transition in verse 11. And so I want to read verses 11, 12, and 13. And we're going to find that there are some friends of Job's who understand what's happening, and they want to be there for him in his time of suffering. And it's a lesson for us. Now, what we end up seeing as we go through a series of conversations, moving on into chapter 3, is that these friends end up really... we kind of see them in a negative light because they really kind of come hard after Job in some areas. But what we see is that their journey to Job was one out of genuine love. It wasn't out of they weren't there to criticize. They weren't there to accuse. Now they take some of what Job says and then they begin to kind of poke and prod a little bit. But when they show up from a genuine place of compassion. And I think there's a lesson here for us, especially now as we see people suffering around us, as we're hearing stories of things that are going on in our communities, not just with this whole virus situation, but just everyday life. If you look around, it will not take you long to find someone who is hurting. And most of the time, if you have an honest conversation, even with people you don't know, if you learn to listen and you learn to pay attention to what people are saying or how they're saying it, it is really simple to figure out where those wounds are. And those wounds give us an opportunity to point them to the healer, to point them to the one who restores. All right, so here in the book of Job chapter 2, I'm going to read these verses, and then there are just 5 things that I want to point out to you in the text and is an encouragement to us in the way that we should act when we know that there are people who are suffering. Job 2:11, it says, "Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all of the evil that had come upon him, they came each from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort, and when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. And they raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads toward heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great." So these 3 friends, they hear of what is happening with Job, and they make this decision to go and to spend some time with him and to encourage him and to be there for him and to comfort him. And the story starts really well, right? It starts from a place of I think, innocence and a genuine desire. Now, we see again that there's some tension and some friction that happens as a result of these conversations. But they came because they had heard of all this evil that had come upon him. And so they came each from their own place. All right, the first thing that I want you to know is when we are aware that there are people who are suffering, we go. We go. They made the decision to meet together, to make this appointment, to go and to be with Job. All right, this requires us to pay attention. It requires us to hear and to be sympathetic, to have a desire to be with people who are grieving and mourning and who are hurting. Church students, we have a responsibility to go, not just respond where we are and say, "Man, that really stinks," but we actually take time and energy and effort and we go to be with people who are suffering. The first thing we see that they did is they went, and so we go. It says that they made an appointment together. Together, I love that word. Together, Because as a church, we do things together. I mean, how many one another's can you think of in Scripture? Right? The Christian life is a life of living together, to being together, to serving together, to growing together, to suffering together. No, we talk about this at First Baptist. No one suffers alone. No one suffers alone. And they went to show him sympathy and to comfort him. So the motivation of us going is to show sympathy and to show comfort. To show sympathy and comfort. It says, when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. They raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes, and they sprinkled their dust on their heads towards heaven. The second thing that we do is we grieve. We don't just go, but we grieve. We hurt with those who hurt. Romans chapter 12, verse 15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. This means that we actually care about people. We care about one another. So when someone's hurting, we are all hurting. We grieve with them. They saw him. They didn't recognize him. But when they saw the condition that he was in, it broke them to the point where they raised their voices and they wept and they tore their robes and they sprinkled dust on their heads toward heaven. They genuinely hurt for one another. There was a genuine love and care and concern for one another. They loved this man Job. The third thing that we see that they did is they stayed. They sat with him for 7 days and 7 nights. So we go, we grieve, we stay. Miss Lanty Quinn, who is in her 90s, and she's a tremendous lady. She has been so faithful to our church. Every time I visit with her, she tells me this. She says, thank you so much for spending your time with me, because your time is your most valuable commodity. It's the most valuable thing that you have. And that means a lot, right? So it encourages me, it challenges me, because I know that people recognize that our time is so incredibly valuable. And when we spend that with other people, it is encouraging to them. I've shared the story before when we had Leah, our youngest. Almost immediately after she was born, they rushed her off to the NICU unit. They said that there was an issue with her breathing, and that we found out later that they were concerned there might have even been a hole in their lung and her lung. And that was a difficult time because we had never experienced anything like that. Leah's the youngest of 4, and so Krista just wanted to hold her baby, and we didn't know what the next few minutes even held, right? And so a couple of our students, some of our girls came up, and they just sat with us. They just sat with us. They laughed with us. They cried with us. They hung out with us in the hospital, and they just stayed. They stayed. They didn't have to. And I know that there are many others who wanted to, and they just couldn't. But they just stayed, and they sat with us. And I'll tell you that was one of the biggest blessings that we've experienced during our time in ministry. So we see these friends, they show up for 7 days and 7 nights, and they just stay. They remain present and consistent. One of the things I think we struggle with is sometimes we're really good about making that initial contact. We're good about going and being with people, but then we move on with life. And part of this care and concern for people who are suffering is that we walk with them through the storm. And so we have to do a good job of not just making an initial contact or outreach and then kind of moving on with their lives, is that we are with them in the journey. So they go and they 7 days and 7 nights, they sit, they stay. The fourth thing that we do is we listen. It says no one spoke a word to him. For 7 days and 7 nights, no one spoke. They just waited. I think sometimes for us, we go into a situation, we know that someone's hurting, someone's suffering, and we just want to steer the conversation, right? Yes, we want to give hope and encouragement. That's good and proper and right. But at the same time, sometimes we just need to listen, just be silent and just be present. Allow them to share and communicate the things that they're thinking, because we think we can fix every problem. We think that we know exactly what they need to hear, and sometimes we're wrong in that. Sometimes we just have to pay attention. We just have to be patient and quiet, and so much of ministering is just listening to people. And not just listening, but then later, like remembering those things. That's crucial. It shows that you care. If someone tells you something and you're able to remember that later and check on them, like listening is so huge. Paying attention is so huge. So as we minister to people who are suffering, we don't just go. We don't just grieve with them. We don't stay. We don't just stay, because we do stay. We don't just stay. But we also, we listen. And then beyond that, we comfort. It says, for they saw that his suffering was very great. The whole reason that they came, if you go all the way back to verse 11, is that they wanted to show him sympathy and they wanted to comfort him. And that's our motivation. Now listen, please listen. This isn't just about this virus. Yes, this is timely for us and where we've been in the book of Job and what is going on. And there are people who are suffering and they will be suffering. And so we do these things. We reach out to them. We stay in contact with them. All of those things. But this is everyday life. When this virus goes and this thing reaches the back end of this and life goes back to normal, these things are still true. And the people that you encounter on a regular basis who are suffering, this is important. All right? You hear of things, you know that someone is suffering, go to them. Be proactive. This is one of the things that I've really been challenged on during my time in ministry. We are very good about saying, like, let me know if I can do something. All right? And I know that comes from a very genuine heart, because that's one of my responses, and I'm very genuine in that. If there's something that you need, please let me know, and I want to take care of it. But there are times where we are proactive, where we see a need, and we don't wait for someone to come to us. We don't wait for someone to say, hey, can you do this? We see a need, and we go, and we do it. These folks weren't hanging back and waiting for Job to send an invitation to come and to mourn with them. Right? That they were proactive in that. And so be proactive. Don't wait for people to say, hey, is there some way that I can help? Right? And yeah, I understand that there may be a time or two where maybe it seems like we're stepping on toes or whatever, but I would much rather err on the side of love and being proactive than waiting and not doing anything because someone doesn't know how to communicate that there's a need, or they're too afraid to communicate because they don't want to impose, or any of those things. And so we must be proactive. So we go. We grieve. We care about people. We really rejoice when they rejoice, and we mourn when they mourn. We stay. We are consistent and present in their life. We listen. We pay attention to what they're saying. We don't go in just trying to solve the problem. We wait and hear what the real need is, and then we can give hope and encouragement from that place. And we comfort. We seek just to be a comfort to the people who are hurting. So I share that with you because it's kind of where we are in the book of Job, and we'll keep walking through this together. But it's something that it's not just timely for now, but it's something that as believers that we do on a everyday basis. This is how we're to live. This is how we're to grow and to love the people who are around us. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that it's brought some encouragement, and I want you to be creative, and I'd love for you to share with me some of the ways that you are doing some of this now. I really do hope that you'll take this serious, and I know that if you made it to this point in the video, that I really hope that you will look for ways to do this. One of the things that we're doing as a family is we know that there are several folks adults who live alone, several older adults who live alone, and so one of the ways that my kids thought up to serve them is to write them some cards, and so that they've written some cards, and they're going to be delivering those. Mailing those potentially, and just finding unique ways to love and encourage people during this time. But do not, please, do not let it be said of you or for us as a church that we allow people to suffer by themselves. All right? No one suffers alone. We go, we grieve, we stay, we listen, and we comfort. That's what this life is about. This is what we are as we are demonstrating the love of Jesus, not just to one another, but to the world. God will draw people to himself. I'll be back here next Wednesday. I'll have another video. I'll probably be posting a devotion video or two in the next couple of days. Every few days, I'll probably do something like that. But be listening out for some other things that we're doing. We'll be sending you plenty of information. But man, I hope that you are having a great week, even in unique circumstances. And just know that this church is here to serve you. And for me and for Krista, that we want to love and serve you. We'll be looking for ways to do that. And at the same time, in all seriousness, we're here, so don't be afraid to let those needs be made known. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon. It's good to talk to you.